Hello everybody, Natalia here. Today is Sunday, April 9th, and it is the 9th day of Camp NaNoWriMo. So what I've been doing so far this month is filming vlog style episodes for you, but today I wanted to do something just a little bit different because I want to talk to you a lot. There's a lot that I have to share with you. So to begin with, I went to the 7 Sentences Colorado workshop yesterday with Maggie, Stiefvater, and Courtney Stevens, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was mostly going to be a workshop about writing the first 7 sentences of your novel so as best to hook the reader and really promise them a certain type of story. And while it was certainly about that, that's definitely not all that it was about. So I want to share with you what I learned yesterday. Our workshop was 8 hours long, so I definitely can't share everything that I learned, but I can share a few things. So when I got there, I was given this workbook. And inside, it has a few different sections in it. It has a section for your ideas, for a premise. A premise is an idea plus a conflict. So, for example, in my fairy novel, the idea was that a girl goes to the fairy realm and meets fairies. That was my first initial idea. I just wanted a girl interacting with fairies. Then I decided that the conflict would be a girl's mother gets kidnapped by fairies, and that turned into my idea of a girl has to rescue her mother from the fairy realm by completing tasks set for her by the fairies. Now that is a very loose premise for my novel. That is not the exact story by any means, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example. So yeah, we have the idea, we have ideas, premise, the 3 S's, which stand for suspense, satisfaction, and solving for X. And solving for X is what I'm mostly going to talk about because it was a really new term for me. It was unlike anything I've ever been taught before in a writing class. So we had 3 S's: mood and setting, character, language, structure, which we just barely touched on, and then we got to do some pre-writing. So throughout the day, Courtney and Maggie would lecture for a while, and then we would do exercises. And then they'd lecture, and then by exercises I mean writing exercises, of course. We weren't doing like... So let's go ahead and talk about solving for X, because that has helped me tremendously. So for example, take 3 movies or 3 books or 3 stories that you really enjoy, and you're going to solve for X by figuring out what you like in all of them. And some of my, like if I solve some of the stories I like for X, for example, we have Hunger Games, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Vampire Knight, the Scorpio races. So if I look at those more closely and I start solving for X, I'm trying to figure out what do I really like about those stories. I like fantasy. For example, the fantasy and the magic in Daughter of Smoke and Bone and the Scorpio races. I like the idea of characters sacrificing themselves for the greater good. I like the idea of very close family bonds and very close sibling relationships, which is a good example of the Hunger Games because Katniss sacrifices herself for her sister Prim. Vampire Knight is an anime if you don't know, and that would certainly be magic. It would be mythology and mythological creatures, and I love all of that. So you can see where I'm solving for X, and that leads me into this fairy novel. There are very strong family bonds in my novel. There is certainly magic. There are mythological creatures. So by solving for X, I realized, okay, these are all of the things that I really love in a story. So once you are able to solve for X with all the stories that you love, and you have that list of those characteristics that you like in those stories, you can use all those characteristics to build 100 stories if you want to. You can keep coming back to those. And if you ever lose your way while you're in your novel, you can go back and say, wait, why was I writing this in the first place? For my fairy novel, it's for the mystery, and it's for the magic, and it's for the lore. That is really what got me interested in writing about fairies to begin with. So whenever I feel myself start to get lost now, I'm going to come back to that list of characteristics that I wanted to have in my novel and remind myself of why it is so special to me to begin with. All right, so let's chat about 7 sentences now, because that's what the entire workshop is titled. Now, the 7 sentences refer to the first 7 sentences of your novel, which are supposed to promise a certain type of story to the reader. So while I have been building my 7 sentences, I've been trying to communicate to the reader the mood of my novel, the setting, the character, and the point of view. So those were 4 things that I had to keep going back to, and then I would tweak my 7 sentences, and then I'd go back and say, wait, I need more of the setting, and then I would go back and tweak my 7 sentences. Because when you read the first 7 sentences of my novel, I want you to know exactly what the novel is going to be about, because it is promising that to you for the rest of the book. For example, if I started writing in a very kind of whimsical, dreamy style for that first 7 sentences, you'd be expecting that to follow throughout the rest of the book. But then if I suddenly go down a very dark kind of narrative style later on in the book, you're going to be confused and you're no longer going to trust in me to tell you a story. So by making that promise to readers in the first 7 sentences, you're also promising to them that you can carry them successfully throughout the entire story. I believe it was Courtney that mentioned that readers engage with their heart, and they'll be much more forgiving if they're emotionally engaged. So by getting your readers instantly hooked on in that first 7 sentences, you're already getting them emotionally engaged with your novel. You want to be able to build trust so that they know that you can carry them all the way throughout the story. Now, I could just talk on and on and on about the workshop I went to and the whole idea behind 7 sentences, and I can certainly do that individually if you would like. So go ahead, and if you have any further questions about it, go ahead and just tweet me at Natalia A. Leigh, or you can send me a message on Facebook, or you can post here in the comments, wherever you are most comfortable. So just go ahead and let me know if you have any further questions, and I would love to help you out with that. But now I want to go ahead and talk about how 7 Sentences Workshop affected what I am going to be doing for the rest of Camp NaNoWriMo, because there are some massive changes coming up. Through this workshop, I realized that I had lost a bit of the heart behind my novel. I was writing it and I was kind of going through the paces, but I wasn't as emotionally engaged as I had been when I started out. So by filling out and doing all the exercises in this workbook, I was able to pinpoint what it was about the novel that I loved from the very beginning. Some of these things are old houses, rustic cottages, forests full of fog, fantasy, magic, myth, and lore. So I made a list of all these things in this workbook, all these things I solved for X about what I really enjoy in stories. And once I started looking at that, I started thinking, wait, I have drifted from this in my novel. I have drifted from all these reasons that I was writing it in the first place, and I need to go back to that. Also, when I started writing my 7 sentences, I realized something incredibly important about the main character that will absolutely up the tension in the novel, and I'm going to have to go back to the beginning now and start tying all of that in. I mentioned in my last video that I had had a bunch of new ideas and that it was going to make editing more difficult because I had so much more to do, and that continues to be true, and it is even more so true now that I have all these fantastic ideas from the workshop. But what I have decided is that instead of writing on and writing more, I am going to go back to the beginning and start building up this foundation that I didn't even realize was there. I picture it kind of like an iceberg. So you know that most of the iceberg is under the water, and we only see a very small portion of it up top. And I feel like I was writing in that small portion of the iceberg that was above the water. But now that I have dug deeper into myself, I have learned what's below the surface and what needs to be the foundation for my story so that everything on top makes sense. And I don't feel like I can continue writing from chapter 16, where I'm currently paused, because I need to understand the foundation that gets me to that point now. So I'm not too upset because I'm not changing the story. The plot points that occur are still going to be the same plot points. However, I need to go back and start further developing my ideas and my characters. Charlotte, in the novel right now, loves the forest, and this is where most of the action takes place in my novel. But when I started digging deeper into her character, I realized yesterday that she doesn't like the forest at all. She's actually terrified of it. And this will really up the tension in my novel because the forest is somewhere that she has to go. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If she wants to be successful in the end of this novel, she has to face her fear of going into that forest. So that really takes my character from a comfort zone and throws her out of it. And that's exactly what I want to happen. I realized it was too easy for her. It was too easy for her to just say, I love the forest, let me just go in there and see all these scary things. I need her to be terrified of it from the very beginning. And I know now why she's terrified of it, and I know how that arc is going to complete later on in the novel. But in order to complete that arc, I have to go back to the beginning and start tying in all these little plot threads and really building up the foundation of the novel. Now, some people will get so stuck on edits before they finish their manuscript that they will never finish it. And I understand that, and I used to be that person that never finished anything. But I do feel confident right now that by going back, I am not going to be halting my progress when I'm ready to move forward. If anything, I feel like right now, I am not prepared at all to continue writing forward from chapter 16 because I need to know how the characters are feeling at this point. And if you've watched my other videos, you know how I talk about characters in that I don't just assign them characteristics and emotions. I very much let them guide me, which is why I don't want to continue taking Charlotte and kind of puppeteering her around and being her puppet master and assigning emotions to her, whereas I could go back to the beginning of the novel, work all these new plot threads through it, and then understand the emotions she's feeling by chapter 16 so that I can write her truthfully moving forward. There's so much more I could say on this topic alone, but I just wanted to share with you that it is time for me to go back to the beginning now, and like I said, I am not going to delete anything. I'm not going to start writing fresh. No, what I'm going to do is take these new things, this bottom of the iceberg that I have now learned about my characters, and start incorporating that into the novel. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see it in every scene or that it's going to be present in the action, because sometimes that's not the case. You know, this character has all this development, and sometimes the author can give it to you and tell you if it's important, but sometimes the author keeps all that development hidden or secret. And that's another thing that is going to be present in my novel now is secret keeping, because I've realized that Charlotte has a big one and she gives it away too easily right now, and that destroys the tension. Because if everything happens too easily, the readers aren't saying, please, come on, share your secret, I want to know. It's just easily given to them, right? So I'm going to take this secret and I'm going to stretch it out, and I'm really going to build the tension in this novel so that when I do reveal the secret to the readers, they feel very satisfied with that and it wasn't so quickly given to them. So for my Camp NaNoWriMo word count, I am currently sitting at 5,849 words. But I don't know now if that is the best way to track my progress, because I might work for an hour and only add 300 words to my word count because I'm taking so much time to go back and read through and move things around and build more foundation for the story. So I don't know if I'm able to change now what I'm working on. Let me go ahead and check. So what I think I'm gonna do is change my word count goal from 20,000 words to a certain number of hours. So we have 22 days left. So I'd like to be spending at least an hour on my novel a day. So I'm going to go ahead and say 22 hours. And hopefully, by the time I have completed that 22 hours, I will already be caught back up to chapter 16 and I can continue writing forward from there. I think this is the right decision because I really can't track my progress by words now. I have to track my progress by amount of time spent on it, I suppose. because like I said, I mean, I might even be removing words, so how can I count that toward my word goal in the end? Thank you everybody for joining me today and watching this video. I know it was really chit-chatty, but there was just so much I wanted to talk to you about. It is so important for me to share my progress with you now because I feel really inspired by all of you and by the community we're building. So I was really anxious to get this video up so that you could all see it and understand kind of what I'm going through. So I am really open to conversation about this. I would like to know if any of you have gone through this process of getting pretty far into your novel. Right now, I'm over 50,000 words in. I think I'm at about 55,000 words. And this is the second draft, because remember, I worked on this during NaNoWriMo as well, and I hit 50,000. So I've spent over 100,000 words with these characters now, and I'm starting to get to know them much, much better. But please let me know if you've ever gone through this process of getting really far in a novel and then realizing it was kind of problematic, or just developing a bunch of new ideas that you then have to go back and implement before you can move forward. I think being able to talk to one another about this and kind of help one another through is one of the biggest benefits of YouTube and Twitter and this AuthorTube community just in general. So again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will give you another update here in a couple of days. All right, bye.